Most people assume that cults belong to the past. Remote locations, charismatic preachers, isolated communities, something distant, something obvious. But what if a high control group didn't look like that at all? What if it looked like a leadership program, a professional network, a path to personal growth? Welcome back to Secret Societies, Cults, and Coffee. Today, we're examining a modern case about how a group known as NXIVM operated in plain sight, recruiting professionals, attracting high-profile members, and building a system of control that many didn't recognize until it was too late. Stay tuned. Like many high-control groups, NXIVM didn't present itself as a cult. It presented itself as a solution. In 1998, Keith Rainier, with the help of Nancy Salzman, founded NXIVM. Salzman was a licensed psychiatric nurse in New York and practiced hypnotism. In 2002, Rainier filed a trademark registration with the United States Patent and Trademark Office for the NXIVM trademark, stating that, quote, "The foreign wording in the mark translates into English as the next millennium," end quote. They marketed NXIVM as a personal development organization, a leadership training program, a system for achieving success and fulfillment. Courses were structured, professional, and expensive. Participants were told they could overcome limitations, unlock their inner potential, achieve professional transformation. Nothing about that appears dangerous. In fact, it appears desirable. NXIVM claimed its training was a, quote, trade secret, unquote, but reportedly used a technique that the organization called rational inquiry. By 2003, nearly 4,000 people had taken this course. Members included business professionals, actors, entrepreneurs. They were people who were looking for growth, direction, and meaning. This is a critical point. Modern cults often recruit capable, ambitious individuals, not because they're vulnerable, but because they are motivated. At the center of NXIVM was Keith Rainier. Now, he constructed an identity that presented Rainier as a genius-level thinker, a visionary, a mentor with unique insight. Members would refer to him with elevated titles such as Vanguard. His ideas were treated as authoritative. Over time, his role shifted from instructor to central authority. Rainier sued the Ross Institute for publishing excerpts of content from the NXIVM secret manual in 3 critical articles that was commissioned by cult investigator Rick Allen Ross. Now, Ross posted a psychiatrist's assessment of NXIVM's secret manual on his website that called it, quote, expensive brainwashing, end quote. And as we have established, when authority becomes centralized and unquestionable, the system begins to change. NXIVM didn't rely on overt force. It relied on structure. Participants were encouraged to take more courses, invest more time, spend more money. Each step felt voluntary, but each step increased investment. Members began to adopt internal language, shared beliefs, and a sense of belonging tied to the organization. NXIVM introduced the idea that personal struggles were internal failures. The system was always correct. Progress required deeper commitment. This creates a powerful loop. If something doesn't work, the individual, not the system, was to blame. Like many high control systems, NXIVM shaped how members interpreted reality. External criticism was often dismissed as misunderstanding, bias, resistance to growth. Members were encouraged to rely on group feedback, internal teachings, leadership guidance. This reduces outside influence and strengthens internal dependency. Now we move into the most controversial aspect of NXIVM, the secret subgroup known as DOS, DOS. DOS was short for, and I know I'm going to butcher this, Dominus Obsequis Sororum, which according to one member that's been quoted as saying, master over slave women. DOS operated as a hierarchical system with masters and slaves, structured layers of control. Members were required to provide collateral, personal information, sensitive material such as nude photos, content that could be used against them. This was what their collateral was. This is a critical shift because now control is no longer just psychological, it's enforced. Members were expected to follow strict instructions, maintain secrecy, demonstrate loyalty. At this stage, the system had moved fully into high control territory. This is one of the most important questions. Why didn't more people recognize what was happening? Well, nothing happened all at once. Each step felt manageable, justified, temporary. Members saw others participating, which reinforced the idea that it was normal. Leaving would mean losing community, admitting error, rebuilding their identity. And the deeper someone is invested, the harder it becomes to step back. Eventually, the system began to break down. External investigations, former members speaking out, journalists investigating and publishing their findings. The authorities became involved, and the structure that had been hidden became visible. In March 2018, Rainier was arrested and indicted on charges related to DOS, including sex trafficking conspiracy, and conspiracy to commit forced labor. The United States Attorney, Richard Donahue, stated that Rainier, quote, created a secret society of women who had sex with and branded his initials into their body, coercing them with the threat of releasing their highly personal information and even taking their assets, end quote. On June 19, 2019, the jury convicted him of racketeering conspiracy, racketeering, forced labor conspiracy, wire fraud conspiracy, sex trafficking conspiracy, sex trafficking, attempted sex trafficking. NXIVM collapsed. Now we step back, just like we did in episode 4. The same framework appears again. Charismatic authority, gradual escalation, identity manipulation, control mechanisms, dependency. But with a modern twist, NXIVM didn't rely on isolation in a remote location. It operated within U.S. cities, Canadian cities, professional environments, everyday life. This is what makes it important because it demonstrates that high control systems can exist without any obvious warning signs. So, what should we take away from this? Well, appearance can be misleading. Not all high control groups look extreme. Some look professional, structured, even beneficial. Control is gradual. It builds over time, layer by layer. Authority matters. When a system discourages questioning, it is creating risks. Dependency is the goal. The more a system becomes central to the person's identity, the harder it is for them to leave. NXIVM wasn't an anomaly. It was a modern example of a familiar pattern. It was a system that offered value, built trust, gradually increased control, and that pattern is what this podcast is designed to examine and to warn our listeners about. So, as we move forward, whether you're evaluating organizations, movements, or systems, remember this. The most important question isn't what something is promising, it's what is requiring in return. Just in case you were wondering, Rainier got sentenced to over 120 years in federal prison and must pay millions of dollars in fines and restitution. So, until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and take a closer look at what most people tend to overlook. Thank you for listening.